Well, hello. I am Fred Wemyss. I've written a book called The Picture Hunter Took. This was printed in October of 2018. I'm going to read you the preface to the story The Picture Hunter Took. And before I read that, I'm going to preface the preface with a note that is under one of the captions of one of the photos in this book. It says here, in 1970, Hunter directed my father in a few scenes, shot at the Wemyss house on Long Island, of a movie called The Split. It was a project for Fountain Valley School. Filmed at the height of the Vietnam War, a lot of the action took place on the island of St. Pierre. Dad played the highly conservative father of a young man who goes to Canada to escape the draft. All right, now we read the preface to the story. The Picture Hunter Took. Argument. Hunter Frost, of the Depression and World War II generation, in his late 40s, plans and carries out a trip to Mexico. The year is 1971. He takes his family, consisting of his wife Lynn, his sons Dan and Bill, and his daughter Julie, from Colorado Springs in a station wagon, a blue Skylark, into Mexico. The Frosts meet their friends the Wemysses, who had driven in a Volvo station wagon from Long Island, New York, in Laredo, Texas. The Wemysses, like the Frosts, are a family of 5. They are Courtney T. Wemyss Jr. and his wife Joy. Their 3 sons are Frank, Bob, and Fred. The Wemysses and Frosts walk from Laredo, Texas to Nuevo Laredo, Mexico for a quick dinner. Then they walk back to Laredo, where they are all staying at a Best Western. The next morning, the trip in the 2 cars begins in earnest. Sleepless before the trip, Hunter sees a showing of a new movie playing just steps away from the motel, Le Mans. This moment is key to the story The Picture Hunter Took. The movie is a disaster for Steve McQueen. As of 2018, many articles and great chunks of various biographies of Steve McQueen have dealt with the complete personal investment McQueen made in the movie. Hunter falls asleep watching it. In Mexico, the Frosts and Wemysses follow Hunter's itinerary. In Mexico City in particular, they see the great sights, museums and college campuses of the Zocalo, Mexico's equivalent of the Mall on Washington. This being a memory piece which attempts to replicate the memory of someone other than the author has been at pains to speculate on whether Hunter, Courtney, Joy, or Lynn knew anything about the disappearing of several students just 2 weeks before they arrived in Mexico City. These students had been commemorating an atrocity which had occurred quite near the Zocalo in 1968, just 2 weeks before the Olympic Games. Hundreds of students in 1968 had been killed at the Polytechnic Institute in what became known as the Tlatelolco Massacre. Many were wounded and many were disappeared. They had been shot, stabbed, and tear-gassed by authorities of some sort, often described as wearing white scarves on their arms. This massacre occurred after several weeks of protest. Hunter takes the Frosts and Wemysses to the Olympic Stadium and to the cathedral. Just before the '68 massacre, anarchists had hung a flag from a spire at the cathedral. It was up for just a few minutes, but a churchman had given permission. Much of this is documented in Enrique Krause's Mexico biography of Power. But what had Hunter heard or read about all this? The author of The Picture Hunter Took recalls no conversations in which these events were mentioned. Indeed, he only learned of them last year while refreshing his mind about Mexico City. A guidebook had a chapter about it. There is a plaque now at Tlatelolco. But is it in the popular memory outside Mexico? By the time the story is halfway over, Hunter has taken his picture of the Wemysses and Frosts outside the Museo Nacional de Antropología. Rhoda Truax-Lynn's mother, who has met the Frosts in Mexico City, has flown back to Boston, having guided the kids to a soccer game, Sanborn's restaurant, Chapultepec Castle, and the pyramids at Teotihuacan. She is the center of the picture Hunter takes, looking much more alive than the rest of the crew. She has the heart the Aztecs sought. Her departure decentralizes the party. The Frosts and Wemysses proceed south. They see the decadence of Acapulco and get through the trek to and from Zihuatanejo, which involves a drive on a 1-lane cliffside dirt road. On the day of the return from Sotavento, the resort at Zihuatanejo, Hunter's car collides with a burro. Soon the Wemysses are proceeding north. The Frosts go to Cuernavaca, Joy having announced that she would not proceed there. The story ends where it begins, in Laredo, Texas, back of the Best Western. Hunter has decided to see Le Mans again, to get his mind off the gloomy thoughts he's had since midway through the trip. He tries to concentrate on the movie. All he can think about is the fate of the Burro. He tries to distract himself by thinking of what Steve McQueen went through, making the movie that destroyed him. He also thinks with disdain of the hideous Jerry Lewis movie Fred wanted the adults to take him to in Mexico City, Which Way to the Front. Just as he'd read about McQueen's struggles in the French magazine Cahiers du Cinéma, he'd read an account of the making of the Jerry Lewis movie. At one point, wondering why Jerry Lewis doesn't try something serious, he mutters, "A clown." This is the author's way of connecting Steve McQueen, Hunter Frost, and Jerry Lewis, because as the trip to Mexico was taking place, Lewis was filming the never-released The Day the Clown Cried, one of the most famous lost films in history. Lewis himself forbade screenings. The movie is about a clown who leads children to the gas chambers during the Holocaust. The movie is thought to have broken Lewis's spirit. Cahiers du Cinéma, by the way, loved Which Way to the Front. The author of this story, the self-same Fred, who couldn't get anyone to take him to Which Way to the Front, found a review online which Cahiers had done in 1971. The author posits the Hunter read that review as well when it came out and knew he would never want to see a second of it. Hunter's motion picture was never finished. At the end of the picture Hunter took, he is back at the Best Western, the heart-wrenching 2 hours watching and not paying attention to Le Mans having passed. Throughout the story are some pop references, notably to songs Frank, Dan, and Julie could just have heard in 1971, songs from the just-released Jesus Christ Superstar. Julie hears the phrase "cluttering up my hallway" as "cluttering up mine hallway." The Frosts find this very amusing. If the reader is wondering why Julie keeps saying "cluttering up mine hallway," it's because she's heard the cutting-edge LP of 1971 before almost anyone else. In short, several things are not explained, but they have reason to be there, as did the lost souls of Tlatelolco, of whom Hunter, Lynn, Rhoda, Joy, and Courtney may not have even been aware. Here's the story. And that's where I conclude for today.